Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today we're going to be talking about chunky non-fictions that I think are totally worth the time. So a book author put out a video recently that talked about intimidating non-fiction books, and for a lot of them, for her, length was one of the major factors. And I've done a video that was also talking about that, inspired by it, and again, length was a recurring theme. So I thought it'd be really interesting to look at my non-fiction shelves and be like, right, what are the beefy boys on here, the proper brick doorstop style books that really like scare the pants off of you when you first see them, that I really enjoyed and think are totally worth the time. So I've got a bunch to talk about today. Let's jump in. The first one is And the Band Played On by Randy Shilts, and this is about the people, politics and the AIDS epidemic, and it is literally a blow-by-blow account of the discovery of AIDS in terms of the first sort of cases of it, and then the history of how it was sort of isolated, how it was understood, and then how it was sort of handled from a social perspective. It is huge and it is very small font, and it really is taken day by day, so it's an incredibly detailed look at this, spanning many different countries as well. I did this on audiobook, which will probably be a recurring theme for a lot of these. I love an audiobook for a big chunky non-fiction, whether it be for bits of it for the whole or for the whole thing. And I think this was so well narrated and it really humanizes the AIDS epidemic. It really looks at the sort of ways that the various communities who were impacted by it, primarily the gay community, were completely ignored and invalidated by politicians, and how it really didn't need to go on for as long as it did if we'd been able to communicate effectively. But then the tireless work that was done by various doctors and sort of scientists and lab technicians and things to try and isolate and work out exactly what was happening. Learned so much about the science of AIDS as well. It is a weird disease, and incredibly fascinating from a history of science perspective, as much as it is the social side of it as well. So definitely worth the read. So well researched. I can't even begin to imagine how Randy Shilts tackled this. We're gonna go for obviously another big chunky one. I need to not say that for all of these books. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. This is a big name book that was incredibly popular, I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago now. Yuval Noah Harari has gone on to write quite a few other things, most of which I've not enjoyed, but this one I do think is totally worth the time. It is a history of humankind, going back to some of the earliest examples of humans, Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, things like that, and the understanding of us changing from hunter-gatherers to sort of more farming practices, the agricultural revolution, and then it brings it all the way through to modern day and sort of a look at our technology now. There are definitely sections of it that I enjoyed more than others. I was a big fan of the archaeological stuff, and then slightly less interested in modern day, which very much tracks with my interest in general, but I do think it's one that is given sort of a fantastic macro sweeping look at humans and the way that we interact, and how things like money and commerce and sort of religion and like real landmark parts of society can sort of evolve and develop over time. I don't like his other work. Like I said, I do not like the follow-on from this, which is Homo Deus. I thought that sucked, and I think he is much stronger when he is playing with history rather than making speculations about the future of the species. Another one I did on audiobook as well, really good. Again, a history book that this time focusing slightly more on one area, and that is The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, Native America from 1890 to the Present by David Treur. This is a look, again as the subtitle suggests, at Native Americans, their interactions with the various invaders, the way that their land and their rights has been chipped away at, and sort of the experiences that they have. But an understanding of Native Americans as not being something, or a collection of people who are sort of wiped out or gone, or sort of, you know, limping away in the dust, but still have a vibrant, thriving community if it would only be given the space to flourish as such. Each chapter is looking at a slightly different area and brings in a modern day person where we get to learn about their life and their sort of experiences, as well as looking at a particular point in history for Native Americans, and it's trying to kind of refute the idea that Native Americanism sort of died at a certain point. I really enjoyed the modern day aspects of it. I know, shocking, that's not normally my thing, but I really loved the interviews and interactions with people. There was one in particular who made his sort of lifestyle and career foraging, and how his sort of understanding of the land impacted, and his ability to then use that and sort of the hunter-gatherer aspect to then sell that on, and I really enjoyed that side of things. It is a beefy boy, they all are on this list, but yeah, definitely worth a read, and really beautiful and lyrical in some places. We are going way back now, and we have Rise of Reign of the Mammals by Steve Brusatte. Steve Brusatte wrote Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which could have totally made it onto the list, but this book is actually bigger, so I thought I'd pick only one of his. I will link a review in various places for Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which is also awesome. This is a look at how mammals evolved after the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs, and sort of the various ways that megafauna evolved, and basically just looks at them sort of running up to modern day, what big beasties are now no longer with us, like mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and things like that. Very cool. I found it not quite as engaging as Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, possibly just because I had less pre-existing knowledge going in, so I found some of the scientific terms a bit difficult to kind of connect to imagery, but there were some really cool chapters. Did you know that your ear bones started originally off as jaw bones, and it is the specialization of teeth and then the singular jaw that is a very distinctive mark of mammals? The more you know. And yeah, Steve brings to this book his same kind of lightheartedness. We get all the fun anecdotes of various other people that he's worked with in the past, and sort of how this information was discovered, some of the kind of key controversies in the area. So it is still a really good book, totally worth your time, and you're going to learn so much. I think if you're a fan of paleontology in general, I think mammals quite often get overlooked, because it's almost like all the cool stuff happened and then with the dinosaurs, and then there was the extinction event, so it's good fun to branch out into different time periods, and this is a great one for that. One that was actually gifted to me, this by a publishing company. It's the only book I've ever accepted for free from like a publishing company or an author, and that is Humankind: A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman. This is a look at the idea of sort of survival of the fittest, and like only the strongest will win, and we are a very competitive species, and instead is putting forward the argument that it is our ability to form social groups and to work together and to be able to sort of like it said, be hopeful and sort of supportive of each other rather than cutthroat, that has actually made humans to be where they are today. So it's refuting a lot of the ideas of sort of broken windows theory. There was a murder of a woman who was mentioned in it that is not the example of the horrifying, like, no, people heard her screaming and they didn't join kind of thing. I can't remember her name now. Kitty somebody. Kitty Genovese, I think. Yes, it's sort of looking at Kitty Genovese as an example. Oh, that took us a while to get there. I'm so sorry about that. And also this idea of, you know, Lord of the Flies, and that it takes so little for us all to descend back into savagery, and it looks at real life examples of Lord of the Flies, but that totally didn't happen. It's a really wonderful book, and like it says, it's so hopeful and joyful, and looks at so many different psychology experiments that have been accepted as gospel over the years that are definitely a little bit more sus than they originally look. Really fantastic book, and I think he's got a couple more that I really need to check out at some point. That was quite a fun one because it's like different non-fiction to what I quite often read. I read a lot of history and science stuff, so that's quite interesting. It's sort of more of a like psychology, social like approach to life kind of book, but yeah, really enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Black and British by David Olusoga. This is a history of Britain, and specifically black people in Britain, and it's trying to refute the idea that the only coloured people who appeared in our country was after the Windrush, because that is not true. It goes all the way back to Roman era and then brings it all the way forward. There's all sorts of excellent references to other great books in there, like there's a section about Black Tudors, of which I have read the book in question, which is by Miranda Kaufman, that's totally worth a read as well, and it is just a wonderful, interesting look at Britain's interactions with the slave trade and colonialism, and also like before that, and the importance of stating as well that black people again were not just specifically due to the slave trade. Like, travel happened beforehand. It was not suddenly that we all got on boats, literally kidnapped a bunch of people and then enslaved them. Like, people moved before that as well in much like nicer ways, and then the sort of the slave trade, colonialism, and our role in that as a country, as Britain, because again, we quite often like to look over the pond and be like, that's all America's fault, when we definitely had a big hand in it. So it's a really epic, sprawling look at that history, and again, this was another one I did on audiobook, would totally recommend. Just so wonderfully well researched, so wonderfully well written, and I think it's such a great book for like, if you're not sure where you want to read in history, or if you're newer to kind of history books, because you get such a broad range of time periods that you can really hone in on like, what bits are you into? Do you like the Tudor bits? Do you like the more modern day stuff? Do you want to hang out in the ancient times? It can help you narrow it down. And then the final book is Spillover by David Quammen. I should have looked it up. It's over here. This is a look at zoonotic diseases, which basically means where a disease can jump from species to species, specifically where it jumps from animals to humans. This book was super popular during the start of the pandemic because there is a great chapter in it where he talks about SARS and essentially predicts COVID-19. So that's really interesting, but it was written in 2016. But independent to that chapter, it is incredibly interesting. There are loads of different examples of diseases jumping species and jumping into humans, and it looks at the various different ways that this can happen, but also the various different ways that we can try and prevent it. There's a really great section on the history of AIDS, which if you are interested in, and the band played on, yes. Oh, forgot the title then. This one works in conjunction with that really well because it tries to track down patient 0, which we're pretty sure was because of monkeys in like the 40s. Crazy. And yeah, just generally it is a big chunky book, but each chapter is focused in a very different area, and it is a really wonderful like history of medicine, and it outlines what it means for things to jump species and sort of how that works in the different areas like viral, bacterial and fungal in a lot of different details. So again, it's sort of a really interesting science book from that perspective. This is another one I did on audiobook. I love me a chunky non-fiction for audiobook. I think they're just great because you can be like, right, this is just a long form podcast that I listen to for a month straight, and that's great. So that is it from me. These are the beefy boys that I think are totally worth a time still. So definitely do let me know in the comments down below if you read any of these, if you agree with me, and what do you consider to be a long book for non-fiction? Like, do you have a sweet spot for a length of non-fiction that you think is appropriate to read, or do you reach a stage where you're like, if it's over 300 pages, I'm not going to touch it? Because I do like me a big non-fiction. I keep buying them and then not quite getting to them because they're scary. So hopefully this video will remind me that some of these books are some of the best reads I've had from my non-fiction reading experiences, and that I shouldn't be afraid if they are in the 400 to 500 range. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.